Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thanks very much for being here, and thank you to the hosts for putting on an excellent conference, to Nick in particular and his partner. I'm here to talk about the Cummins Range project, which a lot of you may know as traditionally being a rare earths project. We've evolved that, and it's now no longer simply a rare earths project. It's actually a phosphate-enabled rare earths project. And I'm going to take you through the story of how we got there and where we're taking it. As a little introduction to myself, I've only been in the CEO role for 6 weeks or so, but I have been in the business for the last 1.5 years, leading the studies, the environmental approvals, metallurgy, and some of the internal system development. So I'm quite familiar with this project. My background is with BHP Billiton in operations up in the iron ore business, moving from plant operations through mining engineering into shift boss and leadership roles, and accumulating as quarry manager at Jimblebar. More recently, I've taken projects from the post-exploration, pre-development phase for a number of commodities across Africa, and so this project, where it now sits, is in my comfort zone. The project is known as Cummins Range. It's situated about 130 kilometers southwest of Halls Creek, and it's right next to the Tanami Road. And that links up to the Great Northern Highway and up to Windham Port. So it's very well connected to this minerals corridor, which is emerging in the north. We're very well progressed with our heritage work, with our JARU traditional owner negotiations, with our environmental baseline surveys. And so we think we can expedite this project by mining a direct shipping ore phosphate as part one of 3 stages towards rare earths. And rare earths was always the game. The project was put together by a board of directors that firmly believed in the future of rare earths, and the management team firmly believed in the future of rare earths. The slight difference we now have is that the resource that we put out earlier this month shows that we have very good quality phosphate surrounding those rare earths, particularly above the rare earth mineralization. And it's the phosphate that then allows us to kickstart this project quite early and evolve the value proposition, which I present to you now. It's a massive deposit. We put out a 500+ million ton resource containing 1.6 million tons of rare earths, 24 million tons of phosphate. That phosphate gives us a fast-track way to monetize through a direct shipping ore phosphate project, which then leads into the more advanced rare earth project later on. Because of that, the team has been adjusted to suit. So we've brought in bulk commodity experience, fertilizer experience, and augmented that with the team that are already experienced in the rare earth space. We're very close to existing infrastructure, so certainly for the direct shipping ore opportunity, there's not very much to do. We have to link up to the road, but everything else is set in place. The road is largely bitumenized all the way to the port. The port is bulk ready, and there's transshipment operations happening periodically at that facility. And the products we ultimately produce from this feed 2 strategic markets. The phosphate is backed up by the food security story, the growing population, and the short-term supply constraint that's really been highlighted by the Russian-Ukraine crisis. And the rare earths are backed up by the electronic revolution and the movement to clean energy generation and clean energy use. The business that I present is structured as such, and I think we're in a reasonably bottomed out trough in the post-exploration, pre-development phase, which is quite typical, unfortunately, and I think that's been compounded somewhat by global uncertainties. But we do own this project 100%, and we also have some very interesting investments as well, which gives us quite a nice position to fall back on in terms of our liquid cash investments. The numbers here presented don't include a $4.5 million raise, which was heavily oversubscribed last week. And so we're well positioned to take this all the way through to approvals. And this is what it looks like. This is where our location is, just south of Halls Creek. The deposit is on the surface under a very small amount of sand cover. And I think what you can see by this picture is it's a very benign landscape. And our environmental surveys are showing that it's a benign landscape. And we know with our talks with the JARU, the traditional owners, that it's a very culturally insignificant area. So we don't expect any problems as we move this through the environmental and the heritage approval space. The great thing about the location is that connection to Port Wyndham. I think that's a very, it's going to be a minerals corridor of the future at that region. So under the ground here is the deposit, which we've recently defined in its true glory, I think. And it positions us as the largest undeveloped Australian rare earths project. The deposit is a carbonatite-hosted rare earths. It's in monazite. It sits surrounded by apatite. That's where the phosphate comes in. And there's a very high-grade core of this rare earth that sit around what's called the rare dike. The phosphate itself is also very clean, so very low in potentially toxic elements, which is important from a DSO perspective, important from a fertilizer perspective. And it also means that when we enrich and concentrate the phosphates in the rare earths, we're coming from a very low base of those heavy metals, including thorium and uranium. So that resource really helps us, the new resource really helps us redefine the project, and we lay it out now as a three-stage development path. Stage one is taking the direct shipping ore phosphate from the surface and taking it directly to port. We've also got a local market at Kununurra, which can take some of the product, and it's direct application fertilizer. Stage two introduces a beneficiation plant. So as these grade ton profiles deplete, as the grade profiles deplete in the phosphates, we can install beneficiation infrastructure to keep those grades high. And that very same infrastructure can be repurposed very simply for stage three, which is when we focus on the rare earth component of the ore body. I think it's very important not to underestimate the complexity of deploying the full rare earth value chain in one hit, especially for a relatively small company. And so this approach manages to de-risk that pathway to rare earths. We get to deliver it in a staged manner, so it means it's much, much simpler to get going, and it's much faster ultimately to generate cash flow. And we still end up with a rare earths project at the end of it. And the products are now finding themselves markets, which we're working through very strongly at the moment. The DSO is to be placed locally, both around the Kununurra agricultural sector, but also down to the southwest of Australia, and the rest of the volumes will go into Southeast Asia. And we've brought on a team to begin focusing on that. As we move through the phosphate concentrate phase, we think there's a great opportunity in Japan and South Korea in particular, augmented somewhat by their interest in the lithium iron phosphate market, which is quite a nice angle to this project. And then slightly longer term, when we move into the rare earth component of the resource and we start producing rare earth concentrate, our focus is really on the Saudi Arabian market, particularly with their capability to generate phosphoric acid and to monetize the rare earths that come with it in the residues, and the wealth of that country and the industrial complexes already in place mean that we can do a very low-risk, high-value approach into the Saudi Arabian markets. And it's been very important to recognize that placing this product is going to be key. And that is why we've augmented the board. And I'll call out Danny Gorman here in particular. He's joined the board as part of our transition where Jeremy Robinson, the old managing director, moved into the non-executive chairman role. And Danny joined us from FMG. He was head of global marketing and sales for FMG. And has flown all over the world with Twiggy, doing market segmentation and placing iron ore, and doing a very, very good job with them. He was actually my old boss back when I was project manager at Danakali. And while we were doing the project, which was a potash project in East Africa, Danny was instrumental in securing the binding take-or-pay offtake deal with Eurochem at a similar stage project to where we are now and where we're moving into shortly. So very, very capable in that market placement space. He joins an already well-qualified board. I'll call out Cameron Henry in particular. He founded and leads still Primero, and Primero build and operate processing plants. So very, very qualified. John Young's here, probably in the audience, I hope, and Sean Hardcastle is our lawyer. This board support the management team, which has been adjusted to meet the bulk space in the near term and augments with the metallurgy. Guy Malang has been with us as head of geology for 4 years and has really understood the deposit that he's led the team to drill out and define. Kai Hoffman A German engineer has joined as study and approvals manager. He comes out of MinRes and BHP, doing studies inside those organizations, so knows exactly how to get through the studies and approvals phase. And then the team on site is managed by Greg, our senior geologist, who's keeping a very calm, level head on site. Lu Zhang is a real gun process engineer who's backed up by two leading metallurgists in Damien Krebs and Gavin Beer, who some of you may know. They're very eminent in this space. And the network of consulting partners are really mine-ready, and that's a key thing here. Mining Plus are doing the mine scheduling work, the mining engineering, the geotechnical. We already have a master services agreement with them to lead the open pit. Shawmac have designed the road to a pre-feasibility study already linking us to the Tanna mine. They designed and built the road for Northern Minerals. Primero, I just spoke about, as our process and non-process infrastructure design team. Asenco are doing the modeling on the haulage and port facilities. Knight Paysold are doing tailings and water management. And then MBS, WSP Gold, and Rapallo are in the environmental and social space, supporting us through those approvals and heritage negotiations. So a really good group. And we're actually surrounded locally by a really good group of community members. There's a really fantastic collaboration up there in the north, which I've learnt over the last few years. We entered into a memorandum of understanding with Ordco, who are the primary fertilizer distributors to the Ord River space and to the Carlton Plain, which is being developed by Kimberley Agricultural Investments. So they're going to be doing the work on placing our product into those local industries, where currently they already get their phosphate all the way from Brisbane, would you believe, and truck it across. So Ordco is a great partner of ours, which we're working through. We have a MOU for collaboration with Agrimin to share port facilities, and we're sponsoring events up there like the Ord Valley Muster and becoming members of the local Chamber of Commerce. So we're becoming a real good corporate citizen in the region. And because of that, because of the team and the development pathway, our position in the community, we think we can enter the market quite quickly. And the markets ultimately, they start with phosphate and they conclude with rare earths. And these are really two very strategic markets. And they actually have very parallel thematics that underpin them. Food security is driven by the population growth of the world, and that's backed up by the depleting soils that need ever more fertilizer to make them more intensive in their production and yields. And we have local demand as well. And interestingly, the LFP battery space is really augmenting with phosphate demand. And the electric revolution drives the rare earths. Population is growing, it's becoming more technologically interfaced. The governments are putting in mandates for clean energy and zero emissions. And so electric vehicles and wind turbines are absolutely key to all of this, and they consume an awful lot of rare earth minerals. So very good market thematics. And diving into that briefly, 15 times the output of Lynas is required by 2040 to meet the EV, the electric vehicle demand. And that's also highlighted by the $1 trillion of investment of the automotive industry into these battery motors. So the battery motor vehicles and the rare earth magnets that go with it. So it's a very, very strong thematic supporting rare earths. And although we've seen some price dips recently, those supply chains are already built and developed by those automotive manufacturers. So slight changes in technology, slight short-term bumps in the road is not going to stop this megatrend. And of course, that's all backed up by a majority of Western governments demanding net zero by 2050. And fertilizer is an ever-growing story. It has been growing at 6% compound annual growth rates for a number of years, and it is really supported by this growth in population. And the LFP battery space is coming of age, particularly in Korea and Japan. So we're seeing really good growth fundamentals for the phosphate space. And right now, the benchmark phosphate is $350 US per ton. FOB, $350 per ton FOB. We think we can get ours to the coast for well under 100 Australian dollars a ton, and we've got about 10 million tons of DSO potential. So really exciting opportunity, really good thematics. And that makes the future very bright for us. Our focus is almost two-phased. Stage one is all about defining that DSO, getting the economic case very well mapped out, moving through the definitive feasibility stage and the approvals necessary to go into operations very quickly. And all the while, we're focusing on stage 2 and stage 3, because the end result is a large-scale rare earth project, which we're going to monetize through the DSO phosphate angle. Thank you very much.